So and based off that passage, we typically focus our attention on stewardship around finances, which is a big part of it.
Sure.
But that's not all it is, right?
Right.
So let's talk about family. How do you steward a family?
Okay, so steward a family. There's a couple of ways that I can go there. God has number one, first and foremost. I would argue that God is the creator of human life. Okay, so if there is a child in a womb, it's because God created that. I understand the human component of that. But sometimes we're prone to take too much glory and too much credit for that child than we ought to. God created that life, that human life. And God has chosen that particular human life to that particular set of parents. And God is saying, here, as parents, I'm entrusting this life to you, and you are to manage it well. I think that goes from everything from the child's health to the child's education, to the child's spiritual life, to their work ethic, to their value system. I mean, every component of humanity, those first several years are crucial to this child's development, and you as parents have stewardship over that. So, take education. You can choose any number of routes today, and thankfully we live in a nation where that's legal to choose any number of routes to educate your child. You could take value system. You can, again, we live in a nation where if you want to educate your child in Hindu values and beliefs, you can do that. If you want to teach them Christian faith and values, you can do that as well. And so we are thankful for that opportunity and that freedom that we have that in this country. But that falls on mom and dad. It all falls on mom and dad. And it's a huge, huge responsibility to train our children, teach our children. So, I mean, can you do that well? Can you manage your child well?
And I've heard it said that a lot of times it's to think about raising children, it's to raise them from a Christian perspective, Christian worldview, to love the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then also to be functioning adults, right?
Right. Yeah.
Kind of that's your goal in stewarding your family,
and to functioning adults and participating adults, right? Participate in society, and again, I mentioned work ethic. I frankly don't want to raise a 25-year-old couch potato living in my basement.
Right.
That's not my goal. My goal is to actually to manage my children, raise them in such a way that at some point I launch them out into the world to live on their own, and to survive and even thrive on their own.
So I'm going to shift. So we talked about kids. Talk about spouses. How do you?
Yeah, great thought. I mean, we have each other. We've talked before about male headship in the home and leadership of the home, and obviously we believe that. And I think along those lines, the man does have some responsibility to steward his wife. But I think even in some other ways, we've got some responsibilities to steward each other, even down to intimacy. 1 Corinthians 7, Paul deals with stewarding physical rights with one another, and intimate relationships. We have just emotions that we have to steward with one another and think through and talk through. We have, this is why we take vows. Right. Stewardship of one another, wife to husband, husband to wife, both, for better, for worse, in sickness and health, for richer, for poor, till death do us part. It's a stewardship idea with each other.
And it takes time, right?
It takes a lot of time.
Is active.
I think it takes time to, it's ongoing, so it doesn't stop.
Right.
Until death do us part. But then, it's developing. or evolving, if I can use that word. It's growing. So I'm becoming, theoretically, as a believer, I'm becoming a better steward of my wife than I was when we first got married. When I first got married, I was an idiot. And over 15 years of marriage almost, we've grown, and I'm a little, I think, you can ask my wife, but I think I'm a little bit better at that now. Same thing with parenting. You know, when 11 years ago my first daughter was born, I had no idea what I was doing. I've grown and I've learned how to do that better along the way, and hopefully I can, Lord willing, continue growing in that idea.
Sure. So, all right. So we talked about kids. We talked about spouses. Neither you or I are grandparents, but what does stewardship in your family look like for a grandparent?
Good call, man. Good thought. One of the things that I want to do is I want to raise my children so that as they are functioning adults, they're able to in turn raise children, right? So I am instilling in them hopefully an ethic, what's the word?
Worldview.
A worldview. It's great. Yeah, a worldview that they are able to then turn around and raise their own children in that same vein of thought, right? So as a grandparent, again, we're not there. I think there's a fine line between taking over, right, and being too assertive and inserting yourself maybe where you're not always welcomed, and then actually stewarding. And so a couple of things you can do as a grandparent. I think one of the most important things is you can pray. I hear grandparents all the time talk about praying for their grandchildren. I want to challenge grandparents to pray for their children that are raising their grandchildren. Yes, pray for your grandchildren. They're the ones that's in school. They're the ones dealing with things, culture. I get all that. But pray for their parents that they'll have the wisdom to train them in the way that they should go, right? And be a support arm for the parent, for your child, the parent of your grandchild. Be a support system and be open to bouncing off ideas and talking things through.
Complimentary, right?
Absolutely.
It's not trying to
It's the village. It's the village, right? And you're no longer, once you're a grandparent, you're not chief in the village anymore. You're a support system, right, to the chief. You're the one the chief's going to come. You're the advisor when called upon. And sometimes we try to insert that when we shouldn't, but you're not the chief of the village anymore. You're now a support system, and there's a new chief.
So it sounds like, we'll kind of close this portion out, but it sounds like stewardship of the family is this lifelong process that never goes away. It's every stage, right?
Absolutely, sure.
And so it's always always trying to figure out where you're at, and then where the scriptures, our position on religion and faith, and how that impacts our family. And
it never ends. You're right, man. It never ends. We're always growing in that. And last word is that's why we got to be praying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we are always praying. And Lord, how you've given me these kids for 18 years. Now you've got grandkids. Now you've got neighbors' kids or orphan kids or whatever the case is. Lord, you've given me these people for this time and this sphere of influence I call family. How do I best influence them? And how do I best steward my influence of them?
Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, man.